Professor Wergely's here. We're almost done with this code. We've taken a lot of concepts from Angular and implemented them. You'll want to go back and read about these concepts so you fully understand. Right now, we're going to implement animations. Now, what's cool about this is Angular has a built-in animations module. So you'll want to come to the docs and read about it, and you'll see I need to add an import to app module TypeScript. That's kind of your main controller file. And then in the actual component file, we need to add different elements that we're going to use. So we need to add trigger, state, style, animate, transition. They also have timeline and keyframes. If you remember in Java, we had timeline and keyframes for our JavaFX transitions and animations as well. So go through and read this, make sure you understand, and we'll go ahead and implement it. Now, back on lecture 10, I have some code down here, this animations code. Instead of writing this, it has a lot of elements here. We're going to copy it, and I'm going to show you where to put it. You'll actually put it up top here. You'll see I have a component. I specify the selector, which is app root. Notice that selector there. So this template, this HTML template, whenever I use the keyword app root in any file, it's going to be replaced with this component. So if I go back to index, check this out, app root. So whenever I use this HTML selector, we're basically making custom HTML selectors. App root will be able to be used. Now I have a lecture that talks about making our own custom HTML elements, and I can post that so you understand the background, just like it's important to understand the background of single page applications. Now, basically, wherever I use this app root selector or this element, this corresponding template is going to be used. And you can see that's defined here. Angular's not that complicated. It's just all separated into separate files, which makes it nice. So whenever I use this selector or this element, it's going to use this template, which is the HTML file, and this style, which is the CSS file. I can include others too. So whenever you use this selector, you're going to also use this animation. So right underneath styles, I'm going to add a comma, and I'm going to put animations. And I'm going to do a colon, bracket, make sure it's spelled correctly. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste this here. Actually, I already had animations there, so I can just do a comma. And I'm going to paste what was in Canvas. Now, you're going to get a bunch of errors because you'll see I have triggers, transitions, keyframes, and styles. So I need to import this. So I come up to the top. I'm going to add an import. And there's going to be a bunch of them here. We're using trigger, just like in the docs. We're using state. We're using style. We're using animate. We're using transition and keyframes. And this is going to be from at Angular animations. Okay, so I can add these here. It looks like I did not use state, but I believe I used state maybe somewhere else. So we'll see that. You'll see this one's kind of grayed out, which means it's not used. We may remove that later if I don't use it. You want to make sure you remove all unused imports, but now you'll see this work. So basically I have a trigger, move in left. So whenever you call move in left, I'm going to make a transition. I'm going to start from its current position, and I'm going to take the style. I'm going to translate X to 300 pixels. I'm going to animate over 200 milliseconds. And I'm going to translate X from 300 pixels down to 0. So it's going to start over to the right, 300 pixels, and move to its current position. And then here, I'll have another transition when it's moving out. And I'm going to start from its current position and then move 300 pixels to the right. and that's going to take 100 milliseconds. So we can see this operate. It's pretty cool. So I can define this animations here, and the trigger is called move in left. So whenever I call move in left from the HTML, it will apply this animation. So if I come to the HTML, we're going to do this on the to-do array list here. So I have an ng4. Before or after the ng4, we're going to apply this animation. And it's basically a directive. So you'll see this block here. And I'm going to put in at move in left. Okay, make sure it's case sensitive as the trigger. If I come back to the compiled code, you see it compiles successfully. I do believe there's some imports we need to add. So one of them, it's in the documentation. So if I run this, sometimes it'll compile. Let's see what happens when I run it. So when I run it, if I refresh, do a test, hit enter, you'll see I got this here. Unexpected synthetic property moving left found. Please make sure that either browser's animation module or another module are imported in your application. So it actually told me what the error is. That's nice. So to check for errors, you got to check too, what's in the terminal when it's compiled, and see if there's any runtime errors. So these would be runtime errors, and these would be compile errors. With JavaScript, you don't really have compile errors. JavaScript, you just write it, you run it in the browser and see if it crashes. And what's nice with TypeScript is you have compiles and runtime errors similar to Java. So no compile error, we got a runtime error, we need to add the import. So if I go back to the documentation, it says I need to add the import browser animation modules into my main controller. So if I come over here, I copied it. I'm going to paste that up here at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and add it behind our reactive forms. We got rid of the other forms because we weren't using it. So I've added it here. Let's see if it works. Normally you have to add this in your package JSON file, but let's see if it works. If I come back, I may have added it already. Let me see if I click add. It actually worked. Okay, it actually worked. We'll do test 2. Look at that animation. So it starts from 300, which is over here. And why did I pick 300? Well, if I go to the SCSS and scroll up, you'll see the max width for the form is 30 EM. And so with 30 EM, 300 pixels looks pretty nice. So if I hit enter, you'll see it started all the way at the end, comes over and hits 0. Check this out. When I hit delete, you'll see it shifts over to the right, but it's quick. It's 100 milliseconds, so it's really quick. This shifts over to the left. When I delete, it shifts over to the right. And you can see that here in the animation. So when I come back, you'll see when I'm adding it. So when I'm adding it, it's going to go from 300 to 0. When I have an element and I'm deleting it, it's going to go from 0 to 300. Okay, and this is the individual keyframes. So I have 100 milliseconds. I need to move 300 pixels. So most likely it's going to take 300 pixels divided by 100 milliseconds and move those corresponding pixels. Sometimes you can specify, start slow, end fast, or start fast, end slow. So you can choose different animation styles, but the default is normally a nice smooth transition through the total amount of time. Now I'm actually surprised this is working. Most of the time you need to add the animations module. So if I come here to the package JSON file and look, it actually has animations already. It looks like it has it already, so I didn't need to import it. So it looks like this is a common element to import. But if you didn't have it, it does specify how to get it. So if I look at the browser's animation module, or I can even do something like this, Angular add and Angular animations. Okay, you can see here it's an npm package, and I basically do npm install Angular animations. You'll see, look, here's the weekly downloads, 1.8 million. So you know this is a good one, and this is the official one. Whereas if you see one that doesn't have very many downloads and it's not being updated frequently, you may want to watch out for that npm package. Now we should do the same with Bootstrap. So if I look up Angular, add Bootstrap, this is the ng Bootstrap GitHub IO page. So this is a good page to use. And it basically says ng add ng Bootstrap. Okay, ng add ng Bootstrap, and you'll see it's going to actually put it in your package JSON, and then we can use the classes without doing any link import like we have before. So we just added a link here in the index file, which can be done, but it's not a good programming practice. So I should get rid of this and add it correctly. Okay, so I got rid of this. We'll just do one at a time. So now if I come over here, I can copy that command. Okay, I'm going to follow the ng Bootstrap GitHub page. I think that's the best way to go. This should be the most up to date. So I'm going to copy this command. Sometimes you do npm add or npm install. Sometimes you'll do an ng add. What's cool about if you do an ng add for Angular add is it'll actually add it in the module for you. If you do an npm install, then you need to add the import yourself. So if they do have an Angular add, check this out. It should update this module file for me. You'll see Bootstrap 10 will be installed and executed. Would you like to proceed? We'll go ahead and proceed. Okay, you'll see it updated. Check this out. It added the ng Bootstrap for me. If I did an npm install, it would not. I'd have to add that myself. Now we took that link out of the index page. Let's see if the Bootstrap still works. So if I come over here and do a refresh, you'll see the Bootstrap still works. So this is the proper way to implement this page using Bootstrap. Now, what about this material icons? Well, we're using material icons, but do we really want to use material and Bootstrap? That may make our page really big. So we can take a look and see what Angular Bootstrap icons are available. Maybe we can switch those out. So if I look up Angular Bootstrap icons, you'll see NGX Bootstrap icons. That's different. We're using just Angular Bootstrap. Okay, so if I use this, I would need to install another library. And then it shows you how to use the corresponding elements there. So if I search, we could add material icons. Okay, you'll see icon fonts. Here's Angular material icons. You'll see here's the basic icons. You may be able to just install the icons library without having to install the whole material library. You definitely don't want to install the entire material library. And if you did, then you want to switch Bootstrap out with material. You don't want to have Bootstrap and material because then your application will be extremely large. So what you can always do is you can search npm. You say npm material icons. You'll see they do have an npm package. So I can install here npm install material icons. And then you add this import material icons, icon front, material icons.css in the CSS file. You'll see it's React, Vue. It can work with any of the modern frameworks. So let's try this. Now watch the package JSON file. So you'll see I have Bootstrap now, an Angular Bootstrap. Now when I do npm install material icons, you'll see material icons was added. I do not believe that was there before, but if I come over here to the app module, it did not add the import here for me. But for this one, it actually says you don't need the import in the app module. You can just add this import in your CSS or SCSS file. So here's in the CSS file. So I'll copy this import. You'll see here's a path to your HTML file, but we don't want to modify the original HTML file. So if I had to, I can put it in here. You'll see I've already imported a Google Fonts. I can also import the material icons here and then take this out of the index file. Remember, don't modify this file by hand. It should be the default file, and find other ways, NPM packages, to use the libraries that you want to use. So now I just did material icons. I don't have the entire material library, and let's see if it still works. So I come over here, refresh. You'll see it still works. Okay, so this is how it should work. Okay, so this looks good. Delete works. Icons work. I didn't modify the original index.html file. I have Bootstrap added. I added animations, and we did it all in a package JSON. So when you submit this, the TAs will see you use Bootstrap, material icons, and animations. You will not submit the node modules. They'll do an npm install, and they will install all these corresponding packages to run your application. You'll see I am on the master branch. I should have made a new branch before I started working. But if you forget, you can always do a checkout -B and make a animations branch. Okay, and then I can do a git status. I can do a git commit -A for all the files -M. We added animations, added Bootstrap properly, and added material icons properly. Should not change the index.html file. Okay, so I would do a git status. That's on its own branch. So I would go back to dev, and then I would merge with animations. And I would go to master, and I would merge with dev. And now we're good to go. So this is it. We've learned a lot. We've learned reactive forms, we've learned animations, we've learned applying CSS and SCSS. So you can use your custom CSS, although I recommend using a CSS library or CSS framework. We've applied directives, form groups. We looked at interpolation. Okay, you want to know what interpolation is for an exam. You want to know what directives are. What's the click? What's two-way data binding, one-way data binding, reactive forms. So if I look up Angular interpolation, okay, go over all these terminologies so you understand what I'm saying. If I just say interpolation, you may not understand what that even means. So come and read the docs and make sure you understand what's going on. So you'll see interpolation refers to embedding expressions into marked up text. By default, interpolation uses the double curly braces as delimiters. We actually call this mustaches. There was an old library, just like history.js back in the previous lecture. There was one called mustache.js, and Angular basically got this idea from mustache.js. I talk about mustache.js in the lecture. I should post that so you understand the basics of interpolation. So you'll see here's current customer. I use interpolation. It basically puts the current customer's name, which is Maria. And you'll want to see template expressions. So we can add numbers. We can do basically actual expressions in the code. You'll see a template expression produces a value and appears within double curly braces. Angular resolves the expression and assigns it to a property of a binding target. The target could be an HTML element, a component, or a directive. So I could, with a directive, I can even put this in like the style tags. I can dynamically change style tags. I can dynamically change, anything. I can put this anywhere in an HTML file. I can even call functions in the interpolation. It's really powerful. This came from mustache.js, and Angular uses it. A lot of other frameworks use it. You'll want to know these terms. So no reactive forms, no template-driven forms, no interpolation, no directives, no one-way data binding, two-way data binding. You'll see right here, here's two-way data binding. So you'll see here, it uses the square brackets and parentheses. They actually have a name for this. I believe they call it, what was it, banana? Something banana. Let's see if they still use that. Okay, I don't see it here. Let me try. Here's event binding. So on click, here's event binding. Here's two-way data binding. You want to go through this. We're not doing pipes yet. We're not doing the advanced stuff, but you'll want to know basic terminology. So when I'm talking about it in the lectures or in the exam or in the quizzes, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so now we're done with the project. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to push all this up. So make sure it's working. We're on the master branch. I'm going to go ahead and add the remote origin, and then I'm going to push everything up. So if I do a git branch -a, it should show the remotes too. There are no remotes. So if I do a git push origin master, push it up. Now if I do a git branch -a, you'll see I have a bunch of branches on my local and only one remote branch. Here's the repo. I just created it. So if I do a refresh, you'll see the master branch is pushed up. You guys can go here and grab the code if you need it. But in your exploration or on your challenge, you want to push all these up. So push up animations, push up all your branches so we can see all the work that you did. We'll push up front end. So I do a git branch -a, you can see what branches are on the remote and what are on your local. So we're still missing reactive forms, we're missing dev, we have front end, master, and animation. So I still have a few I need to push up. So push up dev. And we'll push up reactive forms. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's perfect. This is a good way to tell if you pushed up all your branches. You'll notice I make a branch for a feature and then I merge them to dev, make sure dev works. So you kind of take all the feature branches, merge them into dev. And then once dev is working, you'll merge that into master. This is what you should do for your challenges, your explorations. And this is what you'll do in the industry. Somebody will be working on the animations. Somebody will be working on the front end. Somebody will be working on the forms, and then merge back to dev. Once you have all the conflicts and everything fixed, then you'll push it to master, which is the production branch. No small updates should be done to master. Always do them to dev so you don't break the live version. And then once the dev branch is working, then you push it up to the live version. Okay, that's it for the first Angular lecture. We're going to take a look at Angular routing in the next lecture. So stick with Professor Wergeles and we'll see you next time.